Senator Pat Fahy joins us now. We really appreciate you coming in. On the heels of our community discussion we had on Monday, as we try to find these solutions, diagnose problems when it comes to the rise in juvenile crime, and I guess in the uptick we've seen, especially recently in the city of Albany. So thank you for coming in to talk about this.
Thank you for having me. It's probably a top issue on my mind these days as I live in Albany, even though I have a much bigger district that I represent.
Right, and you represented, a lot of specifically Albany too as the assembly member for years as well. So
and my children went to the Albany schools. I care about it. I believe in Albany, so I believe we must not ignore this and really get to the root of a number of these issues.
Yeah, we look at the state's role in all of this. And I think that's been, that if you watch the conversation on Monday, and there's other conversations that have happened, and people look at the money the state is allocating for the city of Albany to revitalize downtown, the $400 million total, $200 million basically for the city at this point, and say, well, at the end of the day, it looks like the state's stepping up. The question then would be, why? Why has the state diagnosed Albany as a place that needs this kind of funding?
Well, I think long before we had this, the incidences over the July 4th weekend, we know since COVID, we have had a real downturn and serious challenges. Some of those are national, right, with housing jumping, more mental health challenges everywhere, but particularly in downtown Albany, where we've had challenges because the state workers stayed home during COVID. Very few have returned. So downtown economically has hurt, which of course, when the core hurts, the whole region hurts. And we've seen the same in schools. We know you tell children to stay home and sit in their bedrooms behind electronics all day for a year and a half, you're going to pay a price. And I think we're seeing some of that now with youth and with absenteeism, which is clearly at the root of a lot of this, as well as some of the bad behavior, some of the criminal activities, including flare guns, as what appears to me to be the new loophole in our gun laws, which is why I've drafted a couple of bills on that.
For the state to step in here, does that mean somewhere else was missing, something else was missing, someone dropped the ball at the end of the day?
With regard to the whole...
In terms of investments, in terms of trying to incentivize growth and deter crime at the end.
I think in terms of investments, we have seen that shrinking, right? We have so many empty or near empty office buildings. The state workers did not come back. That was our primary industry in Albany. So that really hurt, and one compounded the other. So we're seeing that. I am grateful to the governor. It's been this will be a game changer, the $200 million on the downtown revitalization efforts, as well as the $400 million overall. As you know, I've spent, I think, 9 years now talking about the museum and the need for a children's museum. So we've got that, 787. That's been a multi-year effort. We're finally, the governor is giving significant resources there. So we have some great ideas underway, which I believe in Albany. I think it will turn it around. But in the meantime, what happened July 4th, we have multi-pronged problems there, which require multiple solutions beyond just attendance rates, although that's a problem.
And I know that there's been some conversation at the state level about how funding is going to be used, and there's also a consultant that's been brought in. How much faith do you have in that consultant to know Albany, like you might know Albany?
Well, we've met with the consultant. We have another meeting coming up in, I guess, 2 weeks. I'm going to keep following it very closely. I'm meeting with all the community groups. We are trying to stay very close to this. I'm trying to keep an open mind, but obviously we want an ambitious and aggressive investment plan. We know housing, as with so many areas, housing is a crisis. Especially housing for young people, housing that's affordable. So that where maybe converting some of these apartments, other plans, a soccer stadium has certainly come up a number of times. I want to see what they come up with, and I think that will help. In the meantime, we can't wait on that downtown revitalization plan. We have to address this youth violence. And when you start seeing the violence at 10, 12, and 14 years of age, that's a serious problem. I think some of that escalated with COVID, but that's not enough. We've got to address that. I'm looking at attendance rates all over the region. We're looking at attendance solutions all over the country, seeing what other states are doing, because our attendance rates are not back to where they were pre-COVID. But again, that's also a part of the problem. That's also one part of it. What happens then when we see this bad behavior or criminal activity among children 10 years old? We need more intervention efforts there, and really trying to peel the layers back on that, working with my colleagues John McDonald and Gabriela Romero, talking to everyone from the Defenders Association to the DA, the police chief, all sides of this, all the community groups, multiple meetings, which have been very insightful, and it's clear we need a flow chart on what happens with kids when they do fall through the cracks, but we also need all these agencies working better together. There's some real disconnects in the system.
You know, you think about something like you said, like where's the intervention services, what is there for these young people? And I think, I read off what the city had said after July 4th in terms of here's exactly what we have to offer in the police department as well, the county too. I read that off for our group, and they still were saying, well, that's not exactly, that's great, but what's missing? And I think I'll ask you that same question, what is missing here? Is it connecting to those resources? Is it the availability of them? Is it the accessibility of them?
There are tens of millions of dollars in resources, right, that have been put in across the state. We have certainly provided millions here on Raise the Age funding. I think what's happened is there, can everybody always use money? Of course. I think the community groups often get some of the least amount, but they have proven to be some of the most successful models. You probably know I'm a big fan of SNUG. SNUG is originally guns spelled backwards. We've had that model for at least 10 years or so. It's really taken root. It's been replicated all over the state. It is those types of interdiction right at the street level, gun interdiction efforts that really make a difference. And as well as the other what are called GIVE programs, which funds the YMCA. It funds a whole host of community groups. We're talking to some of them to see I met some of the SNUG folks yesterday, again, seeing what works there. But we think that street level eyes and ears on the street is helping. But in the meantime, we have some siloed programs. What happens when a child isn't showing up to school? 2 of those 12-year-olds weren't in school all year. How could that happen? How could that happen? So trying to deconstruct and say, where are the flags? Where's the interdiction effort, intervention effort when a child isn't showing up at school? That should be a red flag for all of us. And how are we each working together? The school district, the county, the city, social service agencies. So that's where there's a lot of layers to peel here, and I think we're seeing maybe too much siloing of services instead of a coordinated effort. Like everybody's got a piece of it, but I'm not sure how holistically we're looking at this, and we've got to do better.
You mentioned Raise the Age. That is one facet, of course. That's
yes.
after a juvenile has had an interaction with the justice system, and we know the thought behind the law, or we know why it was put in place. But now there's the conversation about unlocking that funding. We know the state comptroller had his report that said, the funding has been allocated, it's not getting out the door, it's not getting to the places it needs to go. We've heard the county executive say, I can only do so much with this, I can't get all this funding because I have to be very intentional about where I put it. You've seen the mayor say, well, the county's not doing this right, and then I've spoken with the state agency about that, and they say they're hamstrung by the legislation in terms of how they can adjudicate this.
A little too much finger pointing for my taste.
But everything, so I guess at the end of the day, if you weave the web here, everything does go. I mean, so now the buck stops, and I've asked other lawmakers about this. Do you change the legislation? Can you change the wording?
I think there is some room for improvement. Absolutely. Let's start with the way that funding does go out the door, and the comptroller is right. It's been too slow in getting out there. Are there millions out on the street? Absolutely, but it's done in a reimbursable format.
Yeah.
So we need to give out those grants ahead of time, such that it can be done without all the hoops involved, and that at least a finite number of dollars are there for the county, especially to give to some of these community groups. Because again, the closer you get to the street level, or family level, or school level, the better off we will be. So that is a bill I'm a co-sponsor of. I fully support the idea of giving direct grants as opposed to reimbursable grants. The money is there. We just need it out the door and at the street level. But we still need this better coordinated effort, especially working with the community groups. And we need, it's a case management. We need to identify a little earlier. And some of these silos, they're not able to even talk to each other. Some of it is privacy issues, especially with young school children. You don't want their names floated all over because, one child has excessive absenteeism, but there has to be a way for systems to talk to each other and a better sharing of that. So that is clearly what's coming across. We have the money. Even different agencies control different parts of this money, state agencies, and that's another silo that needs to be addressed. The other piece of raise the age, there are two words that have been troubling with family court for a number of years, and that is extraordinary circumstances. That seems to be interpreted differently in different parts of the state. We need a clear definition there. If a child or somebody that is a raise the age, which meaning 16, 17, even 15-year-olds, if a child has a gun in their possession, even if they haven't fired that gun, if they are showing that gun around, threatening in any way, that child, we need to get that child off the street and immediately into services instead of putting that child right back out on the streets. I mean, there's a debate, if you will, on how we define extraordinary circumstances. And when it comes to gun possession, we need to do more. We really need, we have to have more zero tolerance on guns. And I don't care if they're flare guns or machine guns. Guns are guns. We saw the extraordinary damage that was caused with flare guns.
What's your message to the community right now?
This is no one problem. No one issue caused this. We need a multi-pronged solution for a multi-pronged problem. I am laser beam focused on absenteeism right now. If nothing else, we need a public awareness campaign. We need to change the debate and change the conversation around absenteeism. So that's one avenue. I've already done the two bills on flare guns. We have a loophole. We can close that. But then we also need to make sure that probation is talking to DSS, the Department of Social Services, so that we are identifying and intervening earlier when a family is in crisis. And if a child's not coming to school, there's a crisis there. And I don't mean this in a punitive way. Often it's, okay, something has broken down here. What is breaking down? How do we piece it back together? It's not about throwing a 10 or 12-year-old in incarcerating them. It's about putting a shining light on them. What is going on that you're not showing up to school, or that you're involved in gang activity, or whatever the case may be? And we need the family courts working with us, as well as the police department, as well as the school district, as well as the city and county. Again, no one's off the hook here, including the state. And just saying it's resources or it's somebody else's problem is just not good enough. So we are, again, myself with my assembly colleagues are having countless conversations. I've spent hours and hours in conversations trying to deconstruct where are the disconnects, where are the silos, not talking to each other, and how do we address this absenteeism that has continued to be a problem even if we are now a couple of years past COVID.
Senator Fahy, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Hit the subscribe button right now so you can stay up to date on these news-making conversations about the issues impacting New Yorkers the most: power and politics.